Coming up on TMZ, our exclusive interview with Mr. Fitzgerald. Hey, Mr. Fitzgerald, excuse me, could we get a few questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so my question is, what do you think Jay Gatsby's idea of the American dream was?
Well, Jay Gatsby lived in the roaring 20s, and his idea of the American dream was because of his past. Because in his early days, he was deployed, in his early days, he was in a farm town where he met Daisy, his love. And that's when he was in the army and he had to get deployed, and he told Daisy to just stay with him and promise that when he came back they could marry. But instead, Daisy didn't keep her promise and she married Tom, because that's where she found that traditional wealth. Like, he has inherited wealth and he was already respected in society because of where his family was. And then he devoted the rest of his life, his last 5 years of his life, to get Daisy. And in order to get Daisy, he had to get wealth. So what he did was, after reading Benjamin Franklin's autobiography, he learned that he needed to time everything in his life to a precise minute. So he scheduled his whole life in order to gain wealth. He gained his wealth, but when he got to the west side of the society, where it was the newly found wealth, where they spent it on anything they wanted and they were just lavish and glorified wealth, he found out that there was no tradition there, and that's where Daisy didn't live, and she lived in the East Egg. But he couldn't get there because he was the newfound wealth, and they never respected him because of that. And he got his wealth because of bootlegging and just criminal activities. Yet Gatsby tried. He spent parties after parties. He got parties after parties. Every Saturday he had a party. He tried to get Daisy to come to his house and see his wealth. But after she saw his material good and his shirts and everything, she still didn't appreciate him because he was just a material good to her. And at the end of the day, she loved Tom. She didn't love Tom, but she stayed with Tom because of his inherited wealth, his traditions, his respect in society, and the fact that he lived in the East Egg society. Gatsby's loyalty was his dream to Daisy. He devoted the last 5 years of his life to her, and he also made himself better for Daisy. The problem is that everything he has worked for was an illusion to him. His idea of the American dream could never come true because he was living in the past. With Daisy was as shallow as the other hollow people who inhabited Fitzgerald's Long Island. So Gatsby could have never won her over with all his efforts. He was one fault that he based his whole dream on past. There is something Jay Gatsby in every man, woman, or child that ever existed. Although his affections are misplaced, Gatsby is a passionate man who cannot live without love, and his American dream was love. Daisy leaves with Tom and Gatsby loses her is the death of his dream. The death of the dream is symbolic of Gatsby's death.
So we just have a few more questions. Do you think we'd do it at a quieter place?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Why not?
So thanks for sitting down with us, Mr. Fitzgerald. Our next question is, what was Nick Carraway's idea of the American dream?
Well, Nick, he represents another part of the book. He's the quiet, reflective Midwestern young man that came from Minnesota, and he fought in the war first. He was in the same like barrack and not really clan, but like same area as where Gatsby was during the army, and he now moves in beside Gatsby to get into the bond business to make some money because he heard he can make money there. And basically his cousin's Daisy, and he can't understand why she knows that Tom's having an affair with another woman, but why she's just dealing with it and letting him have it and not saying anything about it. But Tom realizes by the end of the book that Daisy's just as shallow as Tom was, that really nobody here really has any value to each other, and the people in the East Egg are they just treat everyone else as material goods because they don't really care about anyone else but themselves. And Nick himself moves to the East Egg beside Gatsby, where he gets to learn about Gatsby and he wonders about Gatsby, and that's where he meets Gatsby and sees him staring at the green light, which shows Gatsby's purity of his dream, the green light represented. And then basically Nick's American dream, he figured it out after Gatsby's death. He learned from the past. On Nick's last night in the East Egg, he walks over to Gatsby's mansion, and Nick looks out along the beach and wonders what his land was like ago when it was new and unspoiled world. And then Nick sees the green light, and Nick realizes that the purity of the American dream is something that was in his past, and the past of our nation, and basically in the innocence of our youth. Nick realizes that Gatsby has the sense of the ultimate promise. He possessed the American dream. An older and wiser Nick returns to the Midwest. He returns there because he's sick of the traditions and values and any beliefs that are going along in the East Egg and the West Egg, and he's sick of this. And really what Nick's American dream is just what it was in the past. He wanted to live by traditions, equality, democracy, and purity.
Thank you.
Coming up.
Michael Bublé got married this weekend. While all this is going on, their house is getting robbed.